Hey, what is up guys, it's Thunderstruck115, and today we are going to be responding to yet another shitty review of Black Ops 4 Zombies. The title of the video is The Tragic Tale of Black Ops 4, which was uploaded about 2 months ago. Funnily enough, around the same time, Tim Hansen released his Black Ops 4 Zombies review. But this time, this comes from a YouTuber by the name of Ch0pper, who I only recognize because he used to appear in Codename Pizza's Myth-Busting Mondays a couple years ago. Point being, unlike Tim Hansen, who I've been watching for years, I don't really have much background information on this guy. But even without the background knowledge, the video itself has enough wrong with it for me to respond to. And I think it's important for me to clarify that Ch0pper's video is a review of Black Ops 4 as a whole. However, I'm only going to be responding to the zombies section since that's the only one I really care about. I did watch the whole video through a couple times just to make sure that what he says in the other sections is relevant or not to the zombie section. And it really isn't, besides a few things he says about the game being rushed, but since he reiterates it within the zombies section itself, I don't really think it's necessary to include it. But if you want to view the whole video, just so you feel like you have all the context on everything, it will be linked in the description. So without further ado, grab a drink, grab some popcorn, and let's get right into this.
Part 3, Zombies.
So everything we've just covered, the scrapped career mode or campaign, and the significant reworks that came to multiplayer, are all just great background information and should help illustrate what was probably going on at Treyarch at the time, so that the rest of this context makes sense for the excruciating detail that we're about to go into for Zombies. Because that's why I really wanted to make this video today, was to detail exactly what made this Zombies game so controversial. And I want to make this very clear before we get too deep into this. I'm not a just straight up Black Ops 4 hater. There's a ton I absolutely love about this game. Overall, it's not my favorite Zombies experience of all time, but what I'm most interested in is exploring why it didn't land the way that it should have, and it wasn't the crescendo that the Zombies community should have had in this game. I'm more interested in figuring out what went wrong with it, rather than praising the things that I did like about it, and there are a ton of them, believe me, but that's not really why we're here today. I've been thinking through this stuff for a really long time, so now I finally have the opportunity to put it into a video, and you guys can obviously let me know what you think of these, but just want to be super clear about that, because we're going to be going into extreme detail on some of the criticisms I have for this, but like I said, there is a ton of positives that I genuinely do like about Black Ops 4. That being said, we now come to the juicy part of the video, and regardless of whether you personally loved the product we got or not for Black Ops 4 Zombies, you have to recognize that it is not at all what it was originally intended to be.
Perhaps, but at the end of the day, what really matters is the end product. Damn near every game that has been made has had some cut content. But at the end of the day, did Treyarch promise anything that they didn't deliver? Besides factions, I can't really think of anything.
Now, I'm going to explain in reasonable terms why the core gameplay of Black Ops 4 Zombies didn't work for most people, or at least was a subpar experience to the things we've already played. Don't get it twisted, Black Ops 4 is far from the embarrassing nightmare that is Vanguard Zombies. Black Ops 4 has some real bright spots and things to absolutely adore, and with a few fundamental changes could have easily been the best Zombies to date. But before we take apart mechanics and maps, we need to fully elaborate on the original content plan for this game. We all know that Black Ops 4 launched with full 4 Zombies maps. In fact, they even made a big deal about this on launch. Yet another one of those things that sounded great on paper, but ended up being somewhat harmful in hindsight, I'd argue.
Much like Tim Hansen, Ch0pper makes the claim that having more content at launch is somehow a bad thing. And also like Tim Hansen, he doesn't explain how it's a bad thing. Like, Tim Hansen kind of danced around the issue in his video, Ch0pper just drops it and refuses to elaborate. And quite frankly, I don't know which is worse.
The rest of Black Ops 4, we've gone back to the drawing board on zombies, rethinking how we can give you more ways to have fun with your friends than anything we've made before.
Anyways, the maps we were to get would be 2 maps in the brand new Chaos storyline, 9 and Voyage of Despair, and 2 maps that are soft remakes from the Ether storyline, Blood of the Dead, which is a mob remake, and Classified, which is a 5 remake. However, originally Black Ops 4 was going to launch with Chaos-only maps for the first year, but they decided this would be a less than optimal path because Zombies fans would be outraged, and perhaps rightfully so, to not be able to play any Ether content until after year 1 and waiting until their season 2 of BO4 to start. So they went with the hybrid model. They attempted to tell both stories at the same time. This was a massive mistake in my opinion.
I wouldn't say massive, considering that story has never been the focus of Zombies, but yeah, it was definitely a mistake. If they were going to continue the Aether storyline, they really should have just committed to that. Otherwise, they should have just not had Aether at all and focused on the Chaos story, outside of maybe some remasters. And I mean actual remasters, not the reimaginings. But yeah, I'll give you that. The dual focus was definitely a mistake.
In some sense, it didn't matter whatsoever if the Chaos storyline on its own was a well-written, exciting, and gripping story, or a boring disaster. In either case, it was overshadowed by the Aether storyline that was in its final act and everyone was on board for. In my opinion, there really wasn't a good option here, but the best bet would have been to make BO4 solely an Aether story project. Finish out the story with a satisfying conclusion, allow things to breathe a little bit, take their time, and allow people to accept the end of that timeline. And then you can start slowly introducing new things potentially in the next game or something.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that one, Chief. The Aether story already had a fairly satisfying conclusion at the end of Revelations, and it literally spelled out the end at the end of the end cutscene. So I don't think they should have dredged Aether back up from the depths at all and focused entirely on Chaos. That way people would actually realize that it's a fairly well-written story instead of it just being, I don't care because it's not Aether. But that's just my 2 cents.
Point is, it didn't actually matter how good the Chaos story was or wasn't. It could have been Season 4 Game of Thrones level of writing and storytelling, but nobody would have cared about it more than the Aether storyline that they've been invested for more than a decade at this point. Perhaps after it's concluded, yes, but it was a mistake making them compete for attention. Regardless, we all know that Black Ops 4 Zombies originally had a Zombies Chronicles 2 pack that included the likes of a true 5 remake, Buried, Call of the Dead, which is separate to Tag der Toten, all planned for year 2.
That's a nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
If you have any evidence, and I mean actual concrete evidence, that Zombies Chronicles 2 existed and was going to be released in Black Ops 4, please show me. Because I could not find anything. Sure, I found a whole bunch of leaks and rumors. However, for Zombies Chronicles 2, ever since Black Ops 4 released, or hell, even before Black Ops 4 released, there was a new Zombies Chronicles 2 rumor every fucking week. While I think it's plausible that it may have been in development at some point, there is no concrete evidence that it was.
There's a clear drop in quality after you get past Ancient Evil in the DLC selection in Black Ops 4. Ever wondered why Alpha Omega specifically feels very foreign for a Treyarch map? Something about it always felt off to me. It's like when you watch a Moist Critical video and he's not wearing the white t-shirt. It's like that same feeling you might have when playing Alpha Omega. Why is that though? You're not crazy for thinking that if you've ever felt it at some point, but during its development, the main Treyarch team was pulled off of this map as per Activision's request to start production on Black Ops Cold War, while in the meantime, Alpha Omega would be finished up by Activision Shanghai. I assume the same goes for a fair amount of Tag der Toten as well. It's not that Treyarch didn't work on these maps at all, it's more like Treyarch probably made the general foundation and outline, but someone else finished the details.
No, it's more like most of the shit was finished before Activision Shanghai ever got hold of it, and then they just touched things up a bit.
Compare Ancient Evil to Alpha Omega. One of these has the classic Treyarch polish and feel to it, this indescribable quality that you can tell they at least saw it through to the end. The same cannot be said for the final 2 Zombies maps we got in Black Ops 4 Zombies.
That's subjective. I never felt like Alpha Omega or Tag der Toten weren't made by Treyarch. Maybe you did, but I fucking didn't. Now, I'm not really the biggest fan of Alpha Omega, but it's not because it feels like it wasn't made by Treyarch or some other bullshit. It's just I don't think it's a well-designed map. Tag der Toten is great, though. I really don't know where you're pulling that from. It has plenty to do on it, and it's really fun to play. Also, Ancient Evil probably feels different because it's in a completely different fucking setting.
With the maps on disc, we don't have time to microanalyze all of the maps in the game, otherwise this video would be 10 hours long. However, if for some reason you guys actually want to see me break down the maps in great detail, show me by dropping a like or leave a comment on my internet video telling me that you would like to see me waste my life away over analyzing zombies maps from 2018. Either way, many of the BO4 maps have some of the worst designs for Easter eggs in main quest I have ever seen. They're not difficult per se, most of them are just extremely tedious, and it ruins all of the goodwill the game could have had with its unique setting and atmosphere. As I'm sure a lot of you guys know, Black Ops 4 relied heavily on these extremely complicated puzzles for most of the interactable Easter egg steps in game.
What the hell are you talking about, dude? If anything, Black Ops 4 shied away from the puzzle steps and put in more gameplay challenges. Sure, there are some puzzle steps in Black Ops 4's Easter eggs, but compare this to the Easter egg steps in Black Ops 1, which were almost all puzzle steps. Or Black Ops 2, where pretty much every Easter egg except for Origins relied primarily on puzzle steps. It wasn't until Black Ops 3 where gameplay challenges started becoming a more integral part of the Easter eggs, and Black Ops 4 went further in that direction. Yeah, it relies on puzzle steps, my ass.
Which again, complicated puzzles are fine. The problem is, especially when you play something like Voyage of Despair, you realize they just don't belong in zombies. And with the absolutely egregious systems, such as the respawn timer for zombies in-game, which basically means if you have a zombie for more than 10 minutes, it's going to die anyway and the round's going to flip, you can't actually sit down and do these steps or work them out.
That is objectively false. The bleed out timer has existed in every zombies game prior to Black Ops 4. It's nothing new.
Without zombies constantly harassing you or respawning, it's actually a contradiction and it's impossible. But I'll leave that be for now. But we've covered the selection of content we got for BO4, but that on its own shouldn't have been anything too devastating. Every zombies game, including the greats, have had their fair share of bumps in the road, and when it comes to development and production, that's totally normal. But now we need to get into the nitty-gritty details about the gameplay and why this was a step back for the franchise. Again, on paper, should have been the best, and we were given all sorts of features like custom mutations, authenticity stamp for competitive, seasonal events, which I think were called callings, factions. Oh yeah, we never got that one, did we?
Treyarch, if you're watching this, I'm still waiting for factions, you fucking cowards.
What truly should have been the deepest, most replayable zombies experience ever, with virtually inexhaustible possibility, ended up being, ironically, almost the exact opposite. Hardly anyone ever used custom mutations outside of YouTubers making guides easier to record for themselves occasionally, or an odd challenge every now and then.
Here we go, once again making baseless assertions with nothing to back it up. If you're so confident that nobody plays custom mutations, then show me the numbers. Let's see this data you have.
The reason custom mutations were completely pointless was because they completely disabled any Easter eggs within the map. It's like you had a custom sandbox, sure, but with all of the fun toys from it removed. And because BO4 maps were built primarily with the main Easter egg in mind, all of the custom mutations were in service of absolutely nothing. All of the custom mutations were in service of absolutely nothing.
Easter egg is not the only thing the map is about. Holy shit, dude. You do realize there's this really important aspect to zombies that's even more of a core focus than the Easter egg. What was it? Oh yeah, survival. Once again, you are objectively wrong. Now, it would definitely have been nice to be able to play the main Easter eggs with the custom mutations active. I can understand why they disabled them though, since that way they wouldn't get found with custom mutations. Maybe after the Easter eggs were solved, they could have enabled them and just not given you the achievement for doing it in custom mutations. But the vast majority of the community doesn't go for the main Easter egg. If you don't believe me, check the Xbox Live achievement numbers for the main Easter egg completion. That should tell you everything.
One reason it may have been so people can't cheese their way through Easter eggs. That's entirely possible. But then why not make it so that once people do the Easter egg legit one time around, then they can go through and go wild with it as much as they want in custom mutations. Seems like that also would have given some people some motivation to do these quests as well. I don't know, maybe the mutations would too easily break the quests and make them not work. Then why do mutations at all?
Because most of the community doesn't care about doing main Easter eggs, that's why. And even the portion of the community that does care about main Easter eggs also cares about other shit like, you know, survival. Again, look at the Xbox Live achievement numbers if you want proof.
It's not even close to what custom zombies brings to the table.
Well, no fucking shit.
I'm really not sure why we're comparing custom mutations, which just allows you to change a bunch of in-game settings, to fucking mod tools which allow for custom scripts and even completely new maps. This is an apples to oranges comparison if I've ever seen it, but don't you worry, because this isn't even the worst comparison he makes in this video.
And it was ultimately pointless. The authenticity stamp was a joke and could barely even track stats correctly.
Okay, I'm gonna be completely honest. Until Ch0pper brought it up, I completely forgot about the Black Ops authenticity stamp system. Then again, I'm not sure why he's acting like the mere inclusion of it is a problem, even if it didn't go as far, because you can just ignore it. It's so transparent that ignoring it if you don't care about it is pretty much no different from it not being in the game at all.
And the UI in general was the least intuitive thing we've ever seen in zombies. Let's compare loading a game in Black Ops 4 versus other games. I'm trying to play some Origins today. I don't really want to play with anybody else. I don't want to play public match. I'm just going to play by myself. Okay, click the robot, the things, Origins, and bam. All right, starting the game. You know, I kind of want to play some zombies today. Let's load a map, shall we? Let's play a nice little game of zombies. And select map. There we go. All right, we're in the game. Cool. Okay, so how do we play these now? So there's public matches, there's classic, and there's casual, normal, hardcore. I don't know what rush is. Gauntlets, tutorials. Wait, am I supposed to play the tutorial first? How do I just play a solo match? No, that's not it. Is it just this and then solo match? Okay, I think.
Holy fuck, this is a Strawman if I've ever seen it. That, or this is one of the dumbest motherfuckers on planet Earth. Also, he seriously was able to know that Origins was under the robot head in Black Ops 2, but couldn't figure out where the classic tab was in the fucking Black Ops 4 UI. I mean, I don't like the free-moving cursor on console that much, but you can just bypass that by using the D-pad instead. But holy fuck, this UI is not difficult to figure out at all. You select your map, and click solo match. Then when it puts you in the lobby, click ready up. It's really not that fucking difficult.
And Black Ops 4 would continue in the footsteps of BO3 with its own form of gobblegum, in this game called Elixirs. Now, I'm about to settle the age-old debate about which are better, because in this case, there is an objectively better system.
Alright church, let's put our hands together and welcome our Lord and Savior
Ch0pper.
Christ. Cause he knows what each and every one of you individuals love to do when it comes to gaming. And he stands alone in the realm of the one who knows all and sees all.
No, there is not an objectively better system. Whether you prefer the gobblegums or the elixirs is up to subjective interpretation. Sure, you can list objective reasons in favor of a certain system you prefer, but there isn't an objectively better one.
But side note, I always thought it was weird how BO4 split its menus between Ether and Chaos. It was always clunky and awkward, but it made Elixirs feel so out of place in Ether maps. It makes sense thematically and feels natural in the Chaos maps, but using a magical elixir potion bottle in Classified or Blood of the Dead, for example, feels so shoehorned in. You can make the same case about gobblegums, perhaps, but at least the tone was uniform throughout the whole game. It's so obvious elixirs were made specifically for Chaos, and then they were crammed that system into the ether maps, which you'll see later. They do that a lot.
Now, it's not my place to tell you what you should or shouldn't care about in a video game. However, I just want to point something out. The Aether story does not explain half of the mechanics from an in-universe logic standpoint. Now, some of them are, like the Perks were made by Group 935, the gobblegums were made by Dr. Monty, the Pack-a-Punch machine was made by a blacksmith in the Old West. But wall weapons, guns that appear from chalk drawings, there's no explanation for that, nor is there an explanation for the mystery box, which can somehow spew out random weapons but runs away when you use it too much. Or doors that only open when you pay it a certain amount of points, or hell, the entire concept of points in zombies is never explained in the Aether story from an in-universe logic standpoint. So if they can get away with it, then why can't the Elixirs? Because Zombies is a gameplay-focused game that focuses on the actual gameplay and its mechanics first, and the story second. Again, if you care more about that than I do, then that's your own prerogative. But since so many other mechanics go unexplained from an in-universe logic standpoint, I just personally wouldn't dwell on it. And if you want an explanation, my headcanon is that in Black Ops 3, Dr. Monty provided the premise crew with the gobblegums because their goal in that game was to complete the cycle, which Monty wanted. However, in Black Ops 4, the Aether story is about breaking the cycle, something Monty doesn't want, so he stops providing gobblegums to the premise crew. To stand in for them, the premise crew makes their own elixirs from what they can find. At least, that's how the subtext reads to me. I don't know what the canon explanation is, but there you go.
But back to what I was saying, and I've been wanting to explain this for a while, so here goes. Gobblegums are objectively a better system than Elixirs for multiple reasons. Why? Well, I'm glad you asked, person that's watching my terrible internet video.
Well, at least he has some self-awareness. This video is terrible.
Gobblegums had some interesting depth to its system. For example, and a lot of people still don't know this, and don't feel bad because I only realized it myself pretty recently, but the way the gums are colored aren't random. Gums have a color and a pattern to them. The plain pattern represents classic, the splotches are rare, and the waves are ultra rare or whatever, I don't know, mega, I'm not sure, but...
Okay, just keep this in mind because it's going to come up again in about a minute.
You get the point. The colors represent different functions. Green means the gum is based on real time, i.e. the clock is ticking once you pop it. Blue represents round-based time effect, so that each round passes, you lose a small part of that. And then orange represents a condition applied to the player, i.e. Perkaholic, you have all perks applied, or maybe the next wall weapon you get is Pack-a-Punched, something like that, some condition you now have in effect. And then purple is the only one that is manual activation based, meaning when you think about it, the gum popping the bubble animation only ever exists with purple gums. The game doesn't even have to outright explain all that to you. It's so masterfully built in and thought out, not to mention the overall selection of gums is arguably just better than Elixirs anyways.
If we're talking about the sheer effectiveness, then yes, but overall, I'd say Black Ops 4 has a better selection since they don't completely break the game like they do in Black Ops 3, making it less pay to win than Black Ops 3 is.
And of course, the most important part of how gums work, the gumball cycle. In Black Ops 3, you can bring any selection of 5 different gums into a game. Your first time hitting the machine will be a randomized selection of these, and you'll get one of the 5 you picked. But you can no longer get that same gum again until you've cycled through the remaining 4 at least once. And after 5 hits, you've gotten each gum in your pack once, your gobblegum cycle resets. And you'll have a different random upcoming order. This created this like game within a game idea, where some really interesting strats can be pulled off by tracking your gumball cycle and manipulating it to serve you the best as you progress through the rounds.
Because nothing screams strategy like having the gumball that I get to use be completely dictated to me by the game, instead of, you know, intelligently deciding for myself which one I want to use.
It's a surprisingly deep system that I'm not even sure if Treyarch quite realized how smart that was. In contrast, let's look at Elixirs. This time, there's no clever patterning on the bottles at all. The colors aren't even separated by function this time, instead by rarity, which is completely arbitrary. Gums have a color and a pattern to them. It's so masterfully built in and thought out.
So when Black Ops 3 uses visual cues to delineate which rarity a gumball is, it's masterfully crafted, but when Black Ops 4 uses colors to delineate what rarity it is, it's arbitrary. Double standards at its finest. Ch0pper, I'm gonna have to ask you to
keep that same energy.
Also, the reason why it doesn't delineate function with visual cues is simply because all the elixirs in Black Ops 4 function like the purple gobblegums in Black Ops 3. They're all player activated.
And for some reason, Newton's Cookbook, a godsend feature in Black Ops 3 that allowed you to recycle less valuable gums into rarer and more powerful ones, is nowhere to be seen in BO4.
Yeah, that's fair. I would have liked to see that in Black Ops 4.
There's also no more of the cycling game with these. You can pop them anytime you want, which is cool, I guess, but there's a cooldown after use so that you lose much of that interesting gum combinations you could put together in the past.
Dude, there are no gum combinations. Because if you have a gobblegum in your inventory and then you pick up another one from the machine, it replaces the one in your inventory. Unless, of course, you're talking about popping a gobblegum and quickly grabbing one from the machine and then popping that to sort of enhance their effects, I suppose. But if that's what you're referring to, then you should prefer the elixirs, because then you can actually pull those off more effectively, since it's much easier to pop one elixir and then pop the other elixir that you need. Whereas with the gobblegums, you have to be lucky enough to get the two that you need to make the combo together in the correct order.
Also, you can only carry 4 instead of the previous 5. And side note, it's a big part of what makes the HUD in BO4 awful to look at. Not to mention other issues like Nebulium Plasma is way less valuable per time spent than a Liquid Divinium.
Which is why you earn the Nebulium Plasma way faster than you earn Liquid Divinium.
You can't close app to save elixirs, or in the events of a game crash, you still lose your elixirs, but you would keep your gobblegums.
Yeah, the dashboarding, which completely fucked with co-op play in Black Ops 3, because the second somebody running overpowered gobblegums went down, they close app, leaving the game, and if they were the host, then that wouldn't give enough time for host migration, which means everybody else had to end their game as well. It's a double-edged sword.
I could go on, but again, I want to make this very clear. It's not that elixirs are terrible, they're just simply a worse and dumbed down version of the previous system. With that said, it wasn't the only fundamental system that changed. Most famously, Black Ops 4 would also see a change in the traditional classic perk system, and this change also didn't work for most players. And no, it wasn't simply because there was no Juggernog. That wouldn't really have changed anything. I realize you can't actually discuss the perk system without also talking about how Pack-a-Punch works and the specialist weapons in this game, because they're all interconnected.
They're really not. The only reason people bring up the perk system in regards to the Pack-a-Punch system is because they believe that Pack-a-Punching all the way is a replacement for double tap somehow. And the specialist system isn't really connected to either of them unless you're running time slip in your modifier slot, which increases the speed at which you earn it.
And it's a bit of a mess, so before we do that, I want to disperse another myth about the sole reason Black Ops 4 Zombies failed. And this is the blue screen situation. I see this all the time. People blame, or they say that the only reason BO4 fails is because blue screen's on launch.
It's not the only reason why people didn't really care about the game, but it was definitely the biggest one, because I've seen a whole bunch of people who hated the game at launch because of the blue screens, who would later come back and realize, hey, this game's actually really fun later down the line when all the bugs were fixed. Although, side note, Black Ops 4 should not have launched in the buggy state that it was in.
I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this, but the blue screens themselves were not the sole reason people had a problem with the game. Sure, they didn't help, but the issues were far deeper. I actually spoke to Treyarch employees about this one, and what they told me was interesting. Apparently, when you play zombies, let's take Black Ops 3 as an example, you're actually crashing and running into errors all the time, but very rarely is the crash so fatal that it has to close. However, in BO4, the developer tool that will cause a blue screen at every small error so that they can see and fix them while they're making the game was left on for the full build of the game. Why? Don't know for sure, but it seems like there was some kind of drama and infighting between some in the studio, which resulted in a disagreement about leaving that setting on. Not going to speculate on any further than that. That's as far as my knowledge goes on it. But in some sense, the blue screens to some extent feel like intentional sabotage from somebody somewhere.
If it was intentional sabotage, as you say, then the dumbass forgot to enable it on the Xbox version because there weren't really all that many crashes at launch. The real issue were the fucking bugs.
And that's all I know, but I just figured I'd add my 2 cents there. But back to the core of the problem and what were, in my eyes, the biggest missteps in the gameplay of Black Ops 4. Again, they're all connected, so we have to discuss them all at once. The perk system, pack-a-punch, specialist system, and even the zombie respawn system. It was also said to us that Black Ops 4 Zombies' design goal was supposed to give you the most variety of ways to play. An interesting claim, so let's see if it holds up. But all of these systems influence each other, and this all affects general progression of the game. And why it feels the least satisfying in Black Ops 4 when you take it apart is pretty clear. So for starters, in current BO4 Zombies, you spawn with 200 HP. This wasn't always the case. The game launched with base 150 health, and it was incredibly unbalanced with the rest of the game.
Got certain perks in the past. The special weapon completely changes the way you should be thinking about moving, timing, and dealing with certain engagements. You know, and that's part of the decisions of, oh no, I used it here, and then this thing, oh no.
So they changed it to 200. What did this do? Well, it took away some of the sense of low round vulnerability you feel in early Zombies without Juggernog. Getting Jug in a game is not just about the perk itself, it's more about feeling a tangible climb in power. But the initial vulnerability is important to appreciate the newfound power. Second, the pack-a-punch system. Before BO4, you'd upgrade once, giving your gun a massive power boost, maybe even some new effects. We also had double tap, which was practically standard now to increase the sheer power of guns. BO4 wanted to get rid of this. Fine, that's okay. But what did they replace it with? You now need to pack-a-punch a gun 4 separate times to obtain max damage, and for no reason at all, it costs the same amount each upgrade, and there's no way to visually tell what pack-a-punch level that weapon is. And I always felt it was kind of hard to tell subjectively a single-packed gun from a fully packed gun, and just when it comes to its damage output.
First of all, it's 5 times, not 4. Odd that you would get an objective fact like that completely wrong. 2, the first upgrade is still the standard 5,000 points. It's only the 4 upgrades after that cost the same amount as each other. And 3, yes, there is definitely a difference between a fully packed gun and a gun that's only been pack-a-punched once. Don't believe me? Try using a gun that's only been pack-a-punched 1 time versus a gun that's been fully pack-a-punched, and you will notice a night and day difference. And 4, there is a reason for adding the multiple pack-a-punch levels. It's to increase the amount of progression in the game. Like, you were complaining earlier that the removal of Juggernog removed that progression aspect, but then when Black Ops 4 adds more progression in other areas, you say that's a bad thing too? Like, what do you want?
And finally, the most egregious of them all, the specialist system. This is the one I think hurt the game the most. Spawning in on round 1 with the best weapon in the game was already a bit odd, but what did it do to progression? Well, firstly, they weren't earned at all, like the way they were in Black Ops 3. You did a small quest and received them as a reward, and they were also less crutch in Black Ops 3 for most of them, even being downright useless at times.
Look at that. Look how good the Elixirs. Outlaw, what up, man? Oh my god, no! Okay, it's fine. That was stupid. That was ignorant. It's cool we have near death.
I really don't think that the Annihilator being useless in Black Ops 3 is a good example of BO3's specialist system being better. Like, specialist weapons, especially ones that you earn, should be very useful. But yeah, spawning in with the specialist weapons was a pretty fucking dumb choice. I will agree with you there.
So now we just have them, and I guess that would have been fine. You know, Cold War Zombies did that with field upgrades, but all field upgrades aren't get-out-of-jail-free cards, and they also have tangible, felt differences between them.
Not all the specialist abilities in Cold War were get-out-of-jail-free cards, just the ones that were actually worth using. Shit like Tesla Storm or Energy Mine are fucking useless, though.
The BO4 specialist weapons, for the most part, all do virtually the same thing at the end of the day. The only exception being maybe the Staff of Ra. Otherwise, what does it matter what specialist weapon you have? Who cares?
While it is true that all the specialist weapons have the same function, that being killing zombies, saying that there's no reason to choose which one you want to use is completely fucking illogical. That's like saying that there's no reason to choose between using a shotgun or an SMG because they all kill zombies. But they have different strengths and weaknesses that make each of them unique and therefore allow you to have a preference. If you want to hold down a certain area, maybe the Staff of Ra or the Ragnaroks would be effective. If you want to be a melee powerhouse, you should choose the Hammer of Valhalla or the Path of Sorrows. If you want something with range, maybe the Overkill or the Chakrams of Vengeance might be to your taste.
They basically serve the same function. The minor differences they do have are very trivial. Not to mention, it ruined one of my favorite elements of Zombies gameplay. Intelligent positioning and masterful movement have been made irrelevant with BO4. Remember clutch montages, getting out of insane situations with nothing more than precise and calculated movement? That's now been replaced by pressing 2 buttons on your controller at the right time. And even then, the window's pretty generous, and everything just dies. The tension in the gameplay just felt so thoughtless and empty to me with that. I get what they were going for. It's like, oh, you want to get the player to use this thing at a certain time, and perhaps this is advantageous to use here, and maybe not so much later, but I don't know. I think the over-reliance on the specialist weapon, and not so much on the player's, just mechanical movement, let's say, like, I think that shift was one of the things that hurt this game for me the most personally. I can't speak for everybody else, but for me, that was the case. But it's not like you could even get into situations like that very often anyways, because it wasn't that common. Black Ops 4 made the decision for the first time ever to make zombies spawn in front of you.
This is how we know we're dealing with a very big-brained individual. Zombies have been able to spawn in front of you since World at War. Roll the montage.
I know that might not seem like a big deal, but it totally broke most aspects of training and just traversing maps in general, and even trying to do Easter egg steps.
No, it didn't. If you can't train or move around or do Easter egg steps in this game, I am sorry, but that is 100% a skill issue on your part. I don't consider myself to be all that great at zombies, yet I can do all of those things just fine in Black Ops 4.
I understand what they were probably going for, and I've said this before, but early on in development, Black Ops 4 Zombies wasn't even going to have rounds.
And yet you have zero evidence for this, much like how you have zero evidence for all your other bullshit claims.
I imagine this concept where you just have a near constant flow of zombies while trying to do these adventure-based map quest steps, but it's just the arrangement and execution was so poor in this case. Not to mention alternate ammo types from Black Ops 3 return, but they're all just straight up worse versions of their previous counterparts with one of them removed. No more fireworks. Rip my boy. Nothing new, just all the old ones, but worse.
Then what the fuck do you call cryo freeze? Because that was not in Black Ops 3 in any capacity. Also, they nerfed the alternate ammo types because in Black Ops 3, they were literally brokenly overpowered because you could elevate any bullet weapon to the status of a infinite damage wonder weapon by slapping dead wire on it. While here, they help, but they're not infinite damage. It's funny how you complain about a bunch of other things like the specialist making the game too easy and being too overpowered, but when this game fixes issues with things in previous games being overpowered, it's also a problem. Once again, I'm going to have to ask you to
Keep that same energy.
You don't need to add any new ones, Treyarch, because if you don't gotta develop a new one, it makes it easier. And I'm not totally sure on this, but I think the reason we had less elixirs to work with was because they built a lot of those potential functions into perks, which is ironic now. This system was supposed to give you the most ways to play, but per game, for the most part, you're always restricted to basically 4 perks.
Yes, and so was every game prior to Black Ops 4. What's your point? Like, Der Eisendrache had 9 perks, but you could only use 4 of them at any given time. Unless, of course, you use gobblegums, but that's a whole other different story.
Remember in Origins, you could only get 4 perks as your hard limit, but if you're clever enough, you can dig up extra perk bottles to actually get the rest of the perks and content in-game that it has to offer within the same match. I would say that's a far better system than being restricted to 4 at a time without any real ways to get the rest besides elixirs or like an odd Easter egg that gives you 1 perk every now and again. My point is, old zombies usually limited your normal perk selection, but sometimes through clever in-game methods, you could obtain more, if not all of them.
Yeah, keyword there is sometimes, because that's not a feature of the old perk system. That's just a feature of certain maps. Like, yeah, maps like Origins or Buried, you can get all the perks, but what about Mob of the Dead? What about Transit? What about every new map in Black Ops 3 that wasn't Zetsubo? You couldn't increase your perk limit on those maps, unless of course you either hacked the game, or in the case of Black Ops 3, use gobblegums. So, how is this a problem specific to Black Ops 4 again? While I do think it would be nice if maybe the perk limit was like 5 or 6, when literally every game prior to Black Ops 4 had this same perk limit, you can't suddenly come around and say that now in Black Ops 4 it's suddenly a problem.
BO4 didn't have nearly enough of that stuff in my opinion. A concept I've spoken about before called out-of-game progression for zombies is never something I've been a big fan of. The examples I gave were the Ethereum upgrade trees in Cold War, weapon kits to a small degree, and pretty much Black Ops 4's create a class menu as a whole. This is going to be the first comparison to Elden Ring, something I think zombies could take a few lessons from.
Why are we comparing Black Ops 4 zombies to Elden Ring? Forget apples to oranges, this comparison is more like apples to fucking Doritos. I mean, they're both video games, and good ones at that, but beyond that, they couldn't be more different. Black Ops 4 Zombies is a first-person shooter arcade-style zombie survival game with roguelike elements, while Elden Ring is an open-world Souls game with RPG elements. This isn't even a remotely apt comparison. Hell, he even admits it later.
I like how in Elden Ring, sure, you're limited to certain weapons, spells, and equipment you can use at any given time based on your character and class attributes, but you're not hard locked away from any content at all, realistically. If you want to spend time leveling up in-game to use all those things, at no point do you have to leave the game to fundamentally change everything about your build to use certain features.
Well, God, I fucking hope not. See, here's the problem with this comparison. Zombies thrives on replayability. It's not designed for you to play a map of, let's just say, Ancient Evil once and then never touch it again. No. It's designed for you to play it multiple times, over and over, because Zombies thrives on replayability. Elden Ring, however, takes much longer to beat, and it's not necessarily built upon replayability. A single match of zombies lasts, I'd say, roughly about an hour. Of course, it really depends on what your skill level is. Whereas Elden Ring, like, I've sunk 55 hours into Elden Ring, and I have no idea if I'm anywhere close to the end of the game. And in fact, my brother has sunk over 120 hours into Elden Ring, and I don't think he's beat the game either. Having to restart the game to try out different tools in Elden Ring would be a massive fucking problem because of the sheer amount of time you'd lose. But since Zombies is already built upon you playing it multiple times, it means on one of your subsequent runs you could try out a different perk setup.
Point is, you're limited in the way you choose, but technically all the tools are still at your disposal in-game, should you want to pursue them. The in-game progression is beautiful there, and where I think Zombies thrives the most. Black Ops 4's problem was you'd find your new set of favorite perks, but would very rarely get even the chance to try out new ones without sacrificing the ones you already like.
And previous Zombies games didn't have that issue.
It's such a small thing, but it made a huge difference. Now, is it fair to compare Black Ops 4 Zombies to Elden Ring? Nope, but I'm gonna do it anyways.
So why are you doing it? You already said this isn't a fair comparison, because again, they're two completely different genres. What works for one game doesn't necessarily work for the other.
Another thing that Black Ops 4 desperately needed the most, given that it wanted to be a hardcore quest-focused style of mode, was a casual map to counterbalance it. When Black Ops 3 launched, people complained that Shadows of Evil was too complicated to set up all the time, and that they just want to jump in and start shooting zombies. So they had the Giant for that. It was a perfect counterbalance to one another. You had one complex map that might take a little bit longer to set up, and it's a bit more intricate and in detail, and then you have the Giant where you can literally just load up the game and start shooting zombies immediately. Black Ops 4 unfortunately never really had that. They tried, I guess, with Classified, but it didn't really feel the same. Like, I didn't see the same amount of people that would pine to Classified that, you know, probably enjoyed the Giant when BO3 came out.
Well, no shit, Classified isn't going to feel the same as the Giant because they're two completely different maps. Also, I really don't see how you're thinking that Classified isn't a casual-friendly map when it's literally a casual fucking map. Like, the game doesn't have you doing, like, complex quests or anything. It just has the base setup of Black Ops 4. You get your guns, get your perks, pack a punch, grab a shield, and see how long you can hold out. How the fuck is that not casual? And before you say that Classified was locked behind a $50 Season's Pass at launch, well, so was the Giant. Except in the case of Black Ops 4, there were 3 maps on disc as opposed to just 1. And among those maps was 9, which is fairly simple for even a casual player to figure out, unlike Shadows of Evil.
But Treyarch were smart enough to at least recognize this problem, and they did try to alleviate it with Rush Mode, which, you know, a grand total of 11 people have played ever.
Yet another baseless claim from our Lord Ch0pper. One that, like many of the others, he has absolutely no evidence to back up. Sure, people weren't playing Rush Mode as much as the standard Zombies mode, but I mean, that's because Rush Mode is a side mode in Zombies. But not being played as much does not equate to nobody playing it at all.
And Gauntlets, which granted are quite fun in their own right, but vary dramatically in quality depending on the map played. Point is, BO4 didn't really have any more relaxed mode to play, despite them trying a million different things for that issue.
You literally rattled off several of them. Rush Mode is good for a fast-paced, arcadey style mode. Custom mutations allow people to tailor the difficulty to their liking, so if maybe they want Pack-a-Punch open and available right from the start, or want to make the zombies less difficult, they can. And then there was also casual difficulty, which is perfect for, you know, casuals. This game had plenty of modes for the casual player. Just because you don't care about them, doesn't mean they suddenly don't exist.
Now, the last major misstep I want to talk about, I think they made, was the Easter egg quest design. I remember in 2016 at COD XP, Jason Blundell was talking to us about how one of the things that makes zombies kind of a neat thing was the fact that it doesn't really hold your hand at all. And I get what he's saying. For my real life friends, asking them to do more than just shoot zombies in any given map will be way too intimidating initially for them. It gives zombies this kind of barrier around it, for better or for worse. And he also explicitly said zombies would never have a tutorial mode because that kind of defeats the point.
This is
oh wait, I guess there is a tutorial. Oh.
If you don't kill it, it will kill you.
Okay, so admittedly, this one I actually was able to find something on. And yes, Jason Blundell said that back in 2016. But keep in mind, that was before they designed Black Ops 4 and all of its intricacies. And maybe they decided that, given the new information, that a tutorial would be beneficial. Besides, it's not like you have to even play the tutorial. If you don't need it, just don't fucking play it. It's not that difficult.
Problem is, the game, I feel like, didn't know what it wanted to be. Generally speaking, you could have done this two different ways. Be a low barrier to entry experience to get people comfortable with the game, which is exactly what Cold War did, or you can be a hardcore veteran-only accessible mode, which is what they probably tried to do, but it seems to have confused difficulty for tediousness.
Why do you think it has to strictly be one or the other? Like, why can't we have a mix of both? Have some maps that are easier and others that are harder. It means that no matter where you're at with your skill level, you'll have something to play in Black Ops 4.
And there's a big difference. And I didn't want to do it, but I'm gonna. This is where BO4 ain't like Elden Ring at all.
Yeah, I'd say over 99% of the areas in Black Ops 4 ain't like Elden Ring at all. Because again, they're two completely different genres. I really don't know why you're continuing this stupid as fuck comparison.
In Elden Ring, doing things can be genuinely difficult, and what that means is you go into something new, get smoked your first few times around, slowly start to learn the nuances of the task and maybe the enemy, and then you need to execute it mechanically as well. You can be severely underleveled and still beat insane bosses if you're good enough. Also, I've been doing a totally blind playthrough of Elden Ring, which means no guides and no videos, and maybe it's taken me a little longer, but the entire game is still very accessible to me. In Black Ops 4, there are some things that you will realistically never do without some kind of guide.
Perhaps, but this is also an issue in all the previous Zombies games. You think most people are going to be able to figure out those Easter eggs without looking up a guide on the internet? I mean, if this is a criticism of Zombies as a whole, that's fine, but you should have made that fact more clear. Because here, it seems like you're criticizing Black Ops 4 for doing something that all previous Zombies games are doing, yet you don't criticize them for it.
Fighting a boss in Elden Ring is difficult, and that's fine. Finding 42 bird locations is tedious. Clearing a dungeon in one life is challenging. Doing Morse code trial and error while a zombie hits you in the back is tedious. Fighting a Crucible Knight while not trying to take any damage at all is difficult. Gathering all the 8 million parts on Dead of the Night is tedious. I could go on literally forever about this, but I'm sure you see the point I'm trying to make now.
No, I see you cherry-picking what are quite literally the worst steps in the game when those are the exception rather than the rule. Like, yeah, most of Blood of the Dead's Easter egg is tedious, and I will agree that the Zodiac step on Dead of the Night is fucking AIDS. But far more often than not, those steps lean into more of that skill curve that you're talking about. Surviving the lockdown on 9 or Dead of the Night is challenging. The Raw Tower step is challenging. The Purge the Blight step is challenging. Fending off wave after wave of gladiators with a special weapon is surprisingly challenging. The Voyage of Despair Planet step is challenging. The Alpha Omega Server step is challenging. The Alpha Omega Generator step is challenging. The Togder Toten Orb step is challenging. The Ancient Evil Scepter and Sundial step is challenging. The Raw Defense step is challenging. The Hit Your Mark step is challenging. And they're all capped off by boss fights which are all challenging, with the exception of Togder Toten that has the Orb step. But sure, don't mention those because that doesn't fit your bullshit narrative. You're not fooling me.
The bright side, at least, was it made a lot of the initial Easter egg hunts for these maps incredibly engaging to discover and watch along with. The hunts for these maps would usually last a few days at a time, but that was because arguably a lot of the steps are sometimes nonsensical and downright ridiculous at times. Not all of it, but much of what people remember about good Easter egg hunts are actually just hours of standing around not knowing what to do, and then these short bursts of engaged interaction with a new step or when we're solving a puzzle. In Elden Ring, its puzzles and obstacles aren't very hidden, but it's pulling off the execution of those puzzles or those obstacles, which is the hard part. Again, not saying it's fair to compare BO4 Zombies to Elden Ring,
and yet you're comparing them anyways.
But in some ways, I feel like BO4 could have been the Elden Ring of zombies in a good way. But in a lot of cases, I think it confused difficult for tedious. Not to say that's all it had to offer, obviously, but to me, a large chunk of the quest certainly felt that way.
I guarantee you this motherfucker has only done Blood of the Dead and maybe Dead of the Night. Like, the rest of the Easter eggs don't really have that much tediousness. And all the examples of tedious steps that he has are from these two maps.
Now, down the road at some point during Black Ops 4's life cycle, there was a massive cut in the zombies budget and team size, and I'm sure a lot of you guys know that, and I expect that to have taken place around the time of Alpha Omega, or I guess sometime before then, and the zombies team apparently went from a few hundred people on BO4 to somewhere around like 10 or 12, I believe. It's unfortunate because this meant that BO4 kind of stumbled across the finish line in terms of post-launch support, despite them saying that they were supposed to support Black Ops 4 for multiple months and maybe years to come.
Support does not necessarily mean big content packs. In fact, it has never been that way with the exception of Zombies Chronicles and Black Ops 3. All of these significant content drops happened within the first year of the game's release, because after that, a new COD game releases and Activision wants to focus everybody on that. And I'm pretty sure the reason that Zombies Chronicles was able to be released in Black Ops 3 is because Infinity Ward dropped the ball so hard with Infinite Warfare. After year one, the support for these games are basically just a few balance patches, bug fixes, and making sure that the servers don't shit the bed.
I think the best way to sum up BO4 Zombies was a pretty amazing vision of what could have been, but it was a mode that in execution was just surrounded by terrible circumstances. Maybe in some other timeline, Black Ops 4 truly was the crescendo that the Zombies community was all wanting it to be.
The Zombies community has always been our North Star, which is why we took everything that you've taught us and put it on the table for discussion about where to go to next.
And just like that, the video is over. You know, in some ways it was definitely better than Tim Hansen's video because Ch0pper did actually make a couple good points on a more consistent basis than Tim Hansen, but when he dropped the ball, he really dropped the ball. And quite frankly, if you took all the straw from all the straw manning that Ch0pper did in this video, you could probably build a hay house that the little piggy lives in before the wolf blows it down. But anyways, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more, and tell me what you think on this video. Anyways, that's it. Peace!